please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hi, very good morning. You're watching Trading Hour on CNBC TV 18. I'm Ekta Batra. With me is Prashant Nair, and it turned out to be a start which is largely consolidatory in nature for our markets this Monday. So the Nifty is just about hovering around 10,800, and we have the Midcap Index, which is just about eking out a minor amount of gains. Brent crude is rather in a range post that OPEC needs, so you can probably take that away as a positive. So $73 to $75 per barrel for Brent crude at this point in time, and the big Q to watch out for would be June F&O expiry, which takes place this week. A lot of stocks in focus. Bajaj Finance, fresh 52-week high for that stock. Tata Motors post that big JLR analyst meet that took place, and something like an idea, and PNB Housing from the broader markets, which are making news. Hi Prashant, and KRBL.
KRBL, of course. I mean, enough and more to really talk about and discuss. You know, so you outlined what's happening in the market here and now. I just want to put out just to set things up a little bit on earnings. This is Mahesh Nandurkar of CLSA who put out a strategy note this morning, and we're talking earnings here. So he writes, and I quote, "Consensus expects FY19 Nifty earnings per share to grow at a steep 21 to 23%. This is FY19 Nifty 50 EPS growth. The last few years, Nifty EPS growth was 5% every year. I mean, 5% the last 5 years, and now 21 to 23%. He goes on to say, the low base in corporate banks, pharma and Tata Motors has bumped the numbers. So if you exclude these three areas, the FY19 growth, EPS growth forecast is a more reasonable 12% or so. It's not 21, 23%, it's actually 12% if you exclude corporate banks, pharma and Tata Motors. He goes on to say that companies and sectors where significant margin expansion is projected for FY19 and earnings would be at risk if expansion does not pan out. I mean, this is essentially where the stock is already baking in the expansion which is being expected, include cement, multiplexes, Zee Entertainment, Eicher, Hindustan Unilever and TVS Motors. Of course, I mean, they're only looking at their coverage stocks. Other stocks where we have already built in margin pressure include Hero, Voltas, Pidilite and TTK. So, I mean, you know, we just to sort of put the picture on earnings a bit more clearly. I mean, at the end of the day, the earnings are the lifeblood for the market, and at this point in time, as Mahesh pointed out, I mean, expectations for the full year are a steep 21 to 23% odd. Although, you know, that's a consensus. If you take individual, we've already seen earnings estimates, etc., being brought down to under 20% in many cases. Sudarshan Sukhani is with us of S2Analytics.com. Sudarshan, good morning. Good to have you here. Thanks very much. I mean, so another sort of 20-point lower kind of day. Your thoughts in terms of setups this week, and what would you trade in stocks?
Yeah, good morning again. See, there are 2-3 undercurrents in this market as we go forward. The first is the outlook till expiry on Thursday. And my own sense is that we are likely to be choppy with a downward bias. So the outlook could be that we will stay in the trading range between 10,700 to 10,840 or slide a little below. But the outlook for the next couple of months seems to be that we should break down from the range support of 10,700 and slowly look to lower levels. So the view is that it's mildly bearish. Intraday movements will be up and down, although that seems to be bearish for the day. But the next 2 months should see lower levels.
Okay. Sudarshan, hi, morning. What are the stocks that you'd be recommending then?
Well, TCS is a buying opportunity thanks to the strengthening of the dollar, as well as the fact that mid-cap and large-cap IT continues to outperform anyway. Today, consider buying TCS. The other two stocks I have are both short sells. One is Motherson Sumi. Motherson Sumi is doing what Tata Motors is doing, you know, getting influenced by Europe in some way or the other and falling consistently. So that's a short sell. The second short sell is Sun TV, where a large distribution seems to have taken place and at least a deep correction is in the offing. So two short selling ideas, a buy and a mildly bearish outlook.
Okay, that's interesting because Motherson Sumi in fact is at a fresh 52-week low in today's trade. Sudarshan, we do have a lot of Twitter queries, so let's address some of them. First is Sony, who wants to know what level can he buy Titan?
Well, that's a nice way to look at it, because Titan is a stock he might want to own. You might want to own at some point of time. It's trading roughly around 850 now, and I think you should be very patient. And if it comes in the 725, 750 zone, and it could do that, then that's a perfect place where you want to go along in it and put it in your investment portfolio. So between 725 to 750.
Okay, we've got one more question. Piyush is writing in, I mean, he actually knows what stocks he wants to buy. So he basically wants to invest about 90,000 rupees in Century Textiles and Zee Media. He wants to know the long-term view on these stocks. Sudarshan, what would you tell him?
Well, I wouldn't advise any buying in both the stocks. Both stocks are in declines. So there's no sense, because if we are buying now, we are trying to time the low. We are saying it is here that the stock will stop falling, and that's never a good idea. So the trend here is down. Both stocks are in some kind of bear markets, and you keep them in your list, but this is not a time to buy, and there are no levels to suggest, because they must stop falling first. So my suggestion is don't buy either of the two, just avoid them for now.
Okay. All right, Sudarshan, we're going to let you go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and taking us through all of those strategies. Just want to point out, for the Nifty is just about slipped below 10,800 as we speak, just about consolidating with a negative bias, but it is extending in terms of losses at this point, so do watch out for the trend. And for the Bank Nifty also, marginal underperformance, down 0.3%. ICICI Bank is down 2.2%. We have more F&O strategies lined up. Rahul Shah joins in to tell us what he's tracking. He's from Motilal Oswal. Rahul, hi, over to you then. What are your calls?
Yeah, hi, morning. I think we are seeing two sectors which is outperforming in the market. One is financials and other is pharma, which we've seen in last 3-4 days a good performance. So from that space, I have three ideas. First, starting with Bajaj Finance hitting a fresh new high today. I think the stock is into a new trajectory, and I think good longs built up also on the stocks. I think Bajaj Finance can still give up more 4-5% upside from here, and the risk to reward looks like quite favorable in it. So I would buy Bajaj Finance with a stop loss of 2360 and target of 2485. And secondly is IndusInd Bank. Again, the stock is at near 252-week high, and stock again slowly and steadily have been inching up. So I would buy IndusInd with a stop loss of 1945 and target of 2025. And third, from the pharma space, after consolidating long time, I think we've seen Lupin some kind of positive bias and long built up in the stock. So I would buy Lupin with a small stop loss of 902 and a target of 955.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate you joining in with that perspective at this point in time. All right, there are some comments at the bottom of your screen. This is HDFC CEO who's saying that he's not looking at acquiring controlling stake in PNB Housing. I mean, PNB Housing was up almost 13-14% of the back of news that they may be interest from other players. But this is now quoting Reuters that we are putting out information that the HDFC CEO is saying, well, at least now it could be, I mean, it's not saying that we have no interest. It's saying we're not looking at acquiring a controlling stake in PNB Housing. Maybe there'll be another line in terms of clarification, and we'll put that out for you. But the stock has come off already from the 13-14% gains that it was trading at when we began at 11 or so. You can see that a downtick which has actually come through. So that's where we stand on PNB Housing at this point in time. Ekta.
Yes, in fact, that's on PNB Housing Finance, but we do have ICICI Bank, which in fact continues to be in focus, and it is in focus. It, in fact, like I mentioned, it's under pressure, down around 2.5%. This is despite management clarifications on whistleblower allegations of issues in financial statements. Sonal joins in with more details with regards to the latest on ICICI Bank and what might we expect in the coming days, Sonal?
Yeah. There have been this report about, whistleblower making allegations saying that there were irregularities in reporting for 31 accounts. The bank came out and clarified that there were some delays perhaps in, provisioning, but they have completed all of them by December 31st. But the concerns remain. There are also other allegations that filings with the US SEC were not done on time, for the ADR holders. And it's generally the overhang where we are seeing that you think everything's okay. There's been management change. You have a new CEO and all of that, but some news comes up, and then again you have this concern coming back that there may be more stuff that will spill out of the cupboard.
Okay. All right, Sonal. Thanks very much for that. So that's on ICICI Bank. But nonetheless, in terms of the markets as a whole, it's the oil marketing companies which are taking a bit of a hit as well. So BPCL, which is down 3.5% year to date. Remember that stock has fallen around 20% Tata Motors post that JLR meet that took place for the first time in the UK. Not really enthused sentiment. So that stock is down 3.5%. So do watch out for that. And even something like an NTPC, if I'm not mistaken, that stock is hovering close to its 52-week lows. So that stock is down around 2% at this point. We'll do one thing. We'll take a break. But up next, we'll discuss what's happening in the commodity space. Manisha Gupta will join in, and T. Gyanashekhar will be with us as well.
Okay, welcome back. You're with us here on Trading Hours. So we're down about 30 points now. I think there's been a bit more in terms of a slip which has come through at this point in time. Let's just quickly put up the PNB Housing Finance stock. I mean, I'm just looking at valuations. And if you look at F520 price to book, PNB Housing Finance is pretty much at, I mean, the only, I think, stock which is cheaper is LIC Housing Finance. LIC Housing Finance trades at about 1.5 times F520 price to book. PNB Housing Finance is 2.2. You can look at, HDFC and Indiabulls Housing Finance and GRU and Repco. I mean, most things actually are priced higher as compared to the F520 estimates for price to book. So, and of course, I mean, there are other things we can look at like ROA, ROE, etc. And maybe we will sort of look at them in a bit more detail. But the clarification from the HDFC CFO, quoting Reuters, we put out is, and the stock is, by the way, recovered back. It sold off from being up 14 to being up 9. It's back up about 12.5. And I think people may be reading between the lines to say that, well, they're not saying we're not interested. They're just saying we're not looking at buying a controlling interest in the company. All right, we will revisit that story in just a bit, but Manisha is here with a roundup of all that is happening in the commodity and currency markets. We, of course, had the big OPEC decision which came through, and oil prices, Manisha, have they reacted as per expectations, or is the reaction sort of expected in the days to come?
You know, it's all over the place actually, because on Friday after the OPEC meeting ended, you saw the prices gain up between 4 to 6% on the higher side. And then, of course, they closed slightly lower. And in the Asian markets, we have seen some decline come back into the markets. So the point is that we are still awaiting the finer details here. While, of course, the OPEC allies, all 24 major producers of crude are on the same page. But we still do not know on what is the exact quantum of increase in supplies here and which oil producer will be producing how much. So until that clarity is there, or that perhaps will come in by the end of July, until then, we still are going to see very choppy crude oil prices going forward from here as well. The important thing also is that the 100% compliance perhaps will mean 1 million barrels per day of an increase. But it would be important to see on what members does it come in from, because Saudi Arabia cannot be producing most of it. Russia already has said that they will produce 2 lakh barrels per day extra. So it's on paper that we are looking at 1 million barrels, but how exactly do we get that on ground is yet another thing. And that is the reason the crude oil prices haven't given up all the gains that we saw come in on Friday. T. Gyanashekhar is with us now with his strategies on that space. Gyanashekhar, hi. The major event is out of the way, but without giving much of the clarity. So where are you looking at the crude oil prices moving from here?
I think you're right. It's going to be choppy, but with a bullish bias, because the market was expecting almost 2 million barrel kind of an increase. But what came, the announcement that came was 1 million. But even in that 1 million, like you rightly pointed out, I think there are certain countries where there are still disruptions, and I don't think they can come up to those levels. So effectively, we're looking at something close to 700,000 barrels per day increase. which is why I think the market was positively surprised and it sort of went up. So my own sense is that immediately I think this bullish momentum could continue. What you're seeing today is nothing but adjustment of premium between WTI and Brent. I think with the OPEC announcement, the Brent premium is coming down, whereas the NYMEX is more or less steady. So it's a buy on any dips from here. We're looking at targets of 4,700 to 750 levels.
Gnansekar, also come in on the metal space because Chinese bank, the reserve ratio cut there to increase or improve liquidity. Prospects of demand for metals, etc., also go higher. We also are looking at the US dollar off its highs. The Chile Workers Union has rejected the early wage that, that had been given from the company to them. So there's plenty happening that can impact the metal space as well. But we haven't seen so much of a price reaction.
Yeah, because the rest of the metals are not in a very comfortable shape. I think there's a lot of supply glut when you talk about zinc and few other commodities, which is related to steel. But if you look at copper, I think there's a lot going on fundamentally. The supply disruption, the Chinese central bank cutting rates, and I think they might continue to cut rates to sort of prop up the economy. So that's all going well for copper, but in an overall macroeconomic sense where there is risk aversion, I think copper is not finding enough takers at these levels. But I would still buy it on any dips from here because overall, after a big drop, I think there's going to be some bargain hunting as well.
Oh, well, we will look out for that. Thank you so much, Gnansekar, for joining us and giving us strategies in all that commodity space. But let's put all of that together, really, because we are looking at higher crude oil prices, weakening rupee. The metal prices are all over the place as well. So getting a perspective going with Dr. Devendra Kumar Pant, Chief Economist at India Ratings. Dr. Pant, hi, welcome. First of all, what is your sense that you are getting in for India as an economy with the kind of crude oil price rise that we have seen and, of course, the depreciating currency?
Look, we are looking at a situation which is similar to what we had seen in FY13. But what has happened is from FY13 and now the economy's resilience to absorb the shocks has gone up. There will be an impact on macro fundamentals. There will be an impact on broad macro numbers. So what we are looking at, even with 1 million barrel per day output increase by OPEC and non-OPEC countries, the chances of any meaningful decline in crude oil prices are limited. And this is precise for the regions because we are looking at supply disruption in Mexico, Venezuela, Angola, Libya. What is going to happen to Iran oil supply? Is it China going to buy oil from the Iran without worrying much about the trade sanctions imposed by U.S. on Iran because of U.S.-China trade issues? Right. So what is we are looking at the 1 million barrel per day output increase may not translate to actual 1 million barrel per day supply. Right. And we believe that the prices are going to remain firm.
Dr. Pant, is there any level that you're putting out really? Because markets do anticipate that.
We are working on $75 a barrel during the year, okay, and which is likely to translate to current account deficit increasing to 2.6% of the GDP in FY19. The currency, because of some halt or the slowness in the capital inflows because of other issues. Right. And rising current account. So currency we are looking at depreciating to average 67 rupee per USD in FY19.
All right, so 67 of the rupee and 75 in case of crude is the view coming in from India Ratings.
Okay, all right, Manisha, thanks very much for that. So that's the update on the commodity space. Well, we need to take a break now, but we're going to get you some visuals of Piyush Goyal, the Union Minister for Railways, Finance and Corporate Affairs, who's addressing the press conference at the Asian Infra Investment Bank's 3rd annual meeting. So those are those visuals coming in. And we'll try and get you some more statements from press conference.
It's a basically multilateral lending organization based in China. I mean, like the World Bank or any of these other institutions. It's made up of about 86 countries. And they've already done lending of a little over $4 billion around the world. I mean, it was only started in 2016. Upwards of $1 billion has been sort of put to work in India. This is, as you said, the third annual meeting, where member countries, and finance ministers from around the world will be here to attend this, and this is happening right here in Mumbai. So, as you said, we'll get you details and more on this as the day goes along.
Well, just before we take a break, I just want to point out the fall on KRBL, which has just extended its losses. So now it's down almost 17.5%, but not related. But the other stocks in the rice space are already taking a hit as well. So something like a Kohinoor Foods and LT Foods, those stocks down anywhere between 3 to 4%, absolutely unrelated to this KRBL story. But just want to point out the kind of weakness that we're seeing in specific stocks in the broader markets. Take a break, but up next we'll be discussing market technicals. Kiran Jadhav will be with us, and he's going to tell us what his top picks are.